Well, hello, thank you for joining me today again on the Church History Trail. And where we find ourselves today is in Lisburn, and we're actually in Warren Park. And we're here to look at the history of the Church of the Nazarene, which is just up at the top of the street here. And of course, the Church of the Nazarene actually has a big connection with CORRIE who was a prisoner during the Second World War in Ravensbrück. But before we talk about that, I'm going to give a wee bit of history here. And in August 1954, there was a large tent that was erected on ground opposite to where the church actually stands today. And a mission was conducted by the Church of the Nazarene denomination. Now, at the end of the tent mission, over 30 people requested to have a new church built in Lisburn, and of course then the Church of the Nazarene was birthed. And at the start it was a temporary wooden structure, and the wooden church was officially opened on Saturday the 11th of December in 1954 at 3 p.m. and on the 20th of September 1955 a meeting was held to discuss a site for a new permanent church building. Now, this ground is actually the site that the church now occupies. The opening service was actually conducted on Saturday the 10th of August 1957 at 4 p.m. for the first phase, which was the Sunday school block. Now, there was a famous preacher who came here, and that was on Sunday the 6th of October 1957. The Reverend Minor James came to conduct a great revival and Bible prophecy campaign, and that mission actually ended on the 31st of October 1957. And then in September 1978, the fearless evangelist, as he was known, the Reverend Minor James, who I've just mentioned, was invited back to the church to conduct the Radiant Life and Bible Prophecy Conference. And so it ran from Sunday the 17th to Sunday the 24th of September 1978. And the Reverend James was an international evangelist, and he was also the editor of the Flame magazine. And the first minister of the church was the Reverend Albert Lown. It's Lown, so I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And this is the church here, as you can see. And by June 1958, work had started on the main sanctuary. Now, in May 1959, Miss CORRIE ten Boom, whom the Lord kept through horrendous conditions and treatment by the Nazis in Ravensbrück concentration camp for hiding Jews in their family home in Haarlem during the Nazis' Holocaust of World War II, she actually visited Northern Ireland. And Miss ten Boom from Holland lived with her sister Betsy and their father Casper in a house above their father's watchmaker's shop in Haarlem, which is in Holland. And it's a lovely wee town, Haarlem. Now, CORRIE trained to be a watchmaker herself, and in 1922 she became the first woman to be licensed as a watchmaker in the Netherlands. And the ten Boom family were Calvinist Christians in the Dutch Reformed Church, and CORRIE's faith and the faith of her family inspired them to serve their community by offering shelter, food, money, and of course by also sharing the love of Jesus and the gospel of Jesus Christ with them. And anyone who knocked on the ten Boom's door certainly was not turned away. And the ten Boom family hid Jews in their house in a place that would become known in book and in film as the hiding place. And the family were caught and ended up in a concentration camp. Both CORRIE's sister and father would die in prison, but CORRIE managed to be set free on a clerical error. And certainly you can see the hand of the God in that. Now, I visited the watchmaker's shop and also the family home a few years ago, and it's absolutely fantastic. And just a wee story while we were there, because we had just went into where the hiding place was, and it was a tour we were on, me and my friend Jim, and so we went into the next room, and most of the tour went in, and then I went in, and so there was only one left, and they were waiting on Jim coming. And when Jim came into the room, eventually I said he was in the hiding place. He was hiding. And so this is the Church of the Nazarene. You can see the gates there. Church of the Nazarene. And Corrie actually travelled the world telling people of her experiences during that horrendous time in the concentration camp. And she told people that there is no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still. And of course, the love of God was with Corrie while she was in the concentration camp. And one day in 1947, after Corrie had been speaking at a meeting in Germany on the forgiveness of God, Corrie was in a state of shock because a previous German prisoner guard approached her and asked for her forgiveness. He says, "You mentioned Ravensbrück. I was a guard there. I have become a Christian." And he says, "I know that God has forgiven me for the cruel things I did. But I would like to hear it from your lips as well. Fräulein, will you forgive me?" Corrie responded, "I forgive you, brother, with all of my heart." And I'm sure that took the full grace of God for Corrie to do that. So this is the entrance to the Nazarene. And so in 1959, Corrie ten Boom actually visited Northern Ireland, and she gave the ladies' address in the morning meeting here on Ladies' Day in this church, which is the Church of the Nazarene in Lisburn. So amazing to think that Corrie ten Boom, who there's been books and films done about, actually spoke one morning in this church in 1959. Now, in 1962, the minister over Lisburn Church of the Nazarene was the Reverend Thomas. And on the 5th of November 1962, an article appeared in the Daily Express about the Reverend Thomas and his dog Vic. And the article was entitled, "The Dog That Takes to Sermons." And the article went on to say that Vic, an 18-month-old golden Labrador, never misses a sermon by the Reverend Glenn Thomas, pastor of the Church of the Nazarene in Lisburn, County Antrim. She guides blind Mr. Thomas into the pulpit, then settles down beside him, though sometimes she favours a less ostentatious seat in a pew beside Mrs. Thomas. And Mr. Thomas said she behaves very well during the services and seems to enjoy them. So quite amazing. And he says when she hears me pronounce the benediction, she knows it's about to be over and gets up ready to go. He says my dog takes me to the homes of church members in Lisburn. So that's quite amazing. This was a blind minister, but yet he wasn't blind spiritually. And he was able to serve the Lord even though he was in a physical blindness here in the Church of the Nazarene. Now, by the 31st of May 1963, the entire church building was completed and it was officially opened. And an article appeared in the Ulster Star, which is a local paper still going today, and it was entitled, "Church That We Built Opens at Lisburn." And the reason why it had that title was because the congregation here itself actually built the church. They built the church themselves. So they worked as bricklayers, plasters, painters, etc. And it's estimated that this actually cut the cost of the church in half, the price of it. So it was, I think it was £5,000. Yeah, £5,000 it was. And certainly you wouldn't get a church built today for £5,000. There's no way. But it would have been £10,000 if they had got someone else in to do it. And Mr. Fred Crothers, who I actually know, he's been dead now many years. I used to give treks out with Fred. But Mr. Fred Crothers was chairman of the building committee, and his two sons, Edward and Trevor, were a tremendous help to Fred back in those early days. Now, there was another big preacher who preached here, and that was the Reverend Ian Paisley. because on Sunday the 23rd of June 1963, the Reverend Ian R.K. Paisley spoke at the morning service, and his message that morning was on the place which is called Calvary, and his text was from Luke chapter 23 and verse 33. And of course, if you don't know who Ian Paisley was, he was the minister of the Free Presbyterian Church, and he was also the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party here in Northern Ireland. Now, there was another big name that preached in this church on Sunday the 20th of September 1964, and that was the well-known revivalist preacher, the Reverend Duncan Campbell. And he preached at the morning service here. And the Reverend Campbell was a Scottish evangelist whom God used mightily during the Lewis Awakening, also known as the Hebrides Revival, which was a 20th century revival which occurred in the Scottish Hebrides. And I myself have a connection with this church because I used to attend the youth club here on a Saturday night and thoroughly enjoyed it. And it was good crack, as they would say here in Northern Ireland. We would have played basketball, uni-hock, we played snooker, and then they had a wee epilogue. So I have good memories here as well in the youth club on a Saturday night. And there's a wee text of scripture here that I'm going to read out to you. And I would say probably the best known text of scripture in all the Bible. And it's John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. And so that's the Lisburn Church of the Nazarene and its connection to CORRIE 10 Boone and the Ravensbrück concentration camp during World War II. So thanks for watching, and God bless.